affiliates, and I've interviewed dozens of persons. I've worked closely with and cooperated with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI and have investigated the affairs of the portfolio companies. And after looking at the exact same activity in the bank accounts that Mr. Freeman just reported his investigation, Mr. Freeman didn't hear an alarm. But there was more. Because as Espirito Santo proved, what Espirito Santo proved, that it wasn't even just the FDIC and the Florida Banking Department, and it wasn't even just Mr. Freeman. Because the U.S. Attorney's Office has fully investigated the alleged fraud and described Bezel as a victim of the alleged fraud, not a participant therein. And no present or former employee or principal of the debtor or of any of the debtor affiliates has disclosed or provided to Freeman any facts, information, or documentation that implicates Bezel or the Bezel parties in the alleged fraud, or would support the assertion of any litigation claims in respect thereof, including, without limitations, those persons who have pled guilty to the indictment and are cooperating with the U.S. Attorney's Office. But there was more. Because if the testimony was before you, was that this activity was consistent with factoring. If the accounts receivable BDO certified as real had actually been real. And this was consistent with the factoring activity. In fact, that was the conclusion that not only we reached, but it was reached by BDO, who was looking at the same cash in and cash out. And it was the same conclusion reached by the FBI when it investigated and by the U.S. District. And we found it right in the indictment. The indictment provided that as part of this fraud, the defendants would cycle money from Bank S and BCC to factoring clients and then back to BCC and Bank S with no underlying factoring transaction in order to make it appear that the factoring clients' accounts receivables were being paid on a timely basis. That's why they were doing it. And what did the U.S. District Court then say? Who was the victim of the crime? The victim was Espirito Santo Bank. Espirito Santo. So, after reviewing this information, no alarm sounded. Not for the FDIC, the Florida Department of Banking and Finance, Mr. Freeman.
Oh.
But you know, it wasn't just them, because it was also BDO. Because before BDO got sued, they saw the exact same information. Remember the general ledger? BDO said, in the tester and controls section, BDO examined the postings in both ESBs, that's Espirito Santo Bank, and BCC, Bank S Capital's general ledgers, right? Yes. What does that mean? It means we examined Bank S Capital's general ledger. And then it says, nothing that appeared proper in reflecting the aforementioned scenario. What does that mean? It means we didn't detect any errors in performing the step. Well, did you look at both sides of the general ledger? Yes. We looked at ES Bank S as well as Bank S Capital. And in looking at both sides of the general ledger, did you see items on the general ledger including due to and to from? Yes. And they looked at some pages. Take a look at these pages. Okay. Now we just talked about looking at the general ledgers. Is that one of the ways that you learn about the transactions between DS Bank S and Bank S Capital? Yes. So BDO now claims to you that those bank statements should have sounded an alarm. And y'all know the bank statements I'm talking about. They took this Claudette Randall, you remember Claudette Randall, who was charging the account on the stand? And said, boy, you weren't doing your job, pointing the finger at her. But she fought back. She said, no, this was what the activity was supposed to look like. And I think the main bank statement they used was this one in September, this is September 2001. It had the 900,000 in and out, looking at the bank statement. Y'all remember that? You go back to that. And so that bank statement, pulling out those numbers between Bank S and Bank S Capital, BDO told you that should sound a big alarm. But before they got sued, BDO saw this exact information. BDO never sounded an alarm because there's a general ledger that BDO just showed you, testified they looked at. And in those monthly general ledgers, had the same information. In fact, it has more information in the general ledger because you can tell where they all come from. So we took the exact same general ledger numbers up against the bank account number. BDO saw this exact information. And BDO never sounded the alarm before they got sued. But now, BDO says the alarm sounded. And they put Mr. Grice on the stand to tell you that. And y'all remember? Mr. Grice put up one of those demonstratives for you to show you how that was, looked all wrong because there was $17 million in accounts receivable going to ES Bank S and almost $46 million going to BRFFC. And what does it say up there at the top? He's comparing year in 1998. But y'all remember, we stood up and said, whoa, whoa, whoa. We put up our graphics. We showed that the $17 million was as of May 1998. And the bottom number was as of December 1998. So he wasn't comparing year-end 1998. And then Espirito Santo proved that if he actually compared the same dates, well, one, there was less money going to start with. But if he actually did year-end like he told you he was going to do, well, then it matched. Now, this was so obnoxious that it sounded alarm bells for anyone who looked at it. After all that time to prepare, why be shenanigans? Why would BDO not put up the right numbers? Espirito Santo proved that he was showing you two different things, and then he had to admit it. So to the jury, you were comparing numbers at two very different time periods, right? Yes. Espirito Santo proved that BDO's gross negligence matters. The BDO's gross negligence made it worse. And the BDO won't make it right. Now, His Honor is going to instruct you on the law to apply. The law comes from him, and His Honor is kind enough to tell us what he's going to say to you. It's my job to tell you how the facts apply to the law, what we prove. But the law comes from His Honor. And His Honor is going to instruct you on the law. And He's going to give you some of the same instructions He gave you last time about the believability of witnesses. And then He's going to instruct you on the Espírito Santo's claim. Justifiably rely on BDO's audits. Remember, the false information, that's BDO's audits. And if you find that ESP Finance justifiably relied on BDO's audits, then under the facts of this case, you can't find that ESP Finance was negligent in relying on BDO's audits. Your job is, you have to choose. And if Espírito Santo justifiably relied on BDO's audits, then it wasn't negligent in relying on BDO's audits. And if you see the next instruction down, we go to the legal cause one, the next one. It has the same but-for instruction as right here. And under the facts of this case, if you find that but for BDO Seidman's negligence, that there wouldn't have been a loss, then Espírito Santo has proven that it's not but for Espírito Santo's action. So again, your job is to seek the truth when you need to choose. And once you've made that choice, then you're going to see that BDO has the same defense over and over again. Next, they'll have instruction for Banco Espírito Santo, Nassau branch. That's on the $30 million. And then there's a long list. And these are all the other people that BDO wants to blame. Victor Balestra, Mark Monet, Campaign, I can't even say that one. Campaign Bancaire Espírito Santo S.A. Robert Stewart, remember Robert Stewart? He's been the lawyer in this community for 50 years. He came in here and testified. These are all the people. And then His Honor will instruct you. We go to the damages part. But if you find for them, then you don't award us. But if you find for ESP Finance and Banco Espírito Santo, then you need to decide what is the damages. And Espírito Santo has proven that we lost $170 million. And that will take you to the verdict form. Okay. And the first question that you'll be asked is, do you find ESP Finance on its claim for damages against BDO Seidman? And Espírito Santo has proven that it justifiably relied on BDO and that BDO caused the loss. And Espírito Santo has proven that yes, plaintiff ESP Finance and its claim for damages against defendant BDO Seidman. And then the next long list of questions are all the people that BDO wants to blame. And you'll see an instruction there. So then the next question is, was there negligence on the part of plaintiff ESP Finance, which was a legal cause of its damages? And again, if you find that we justifiably relied and that BDO was the but-for cause, then in the facts of this case, the answer is no. And then it will be no for everybody else that they want to point the finger at. But there's a lot of them. And then you go to the next page. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Then His Honor, the instruction says, if you answered no to questions 2 through 12, that's all the people they want to blame, then go to question 14. You skip 13. But show them 13. Can we do that? 13 would be put all the percentage if you want to point the finger at other people. But you don't need to answer that question. The instructions will say go to the next one, number 14. And it says, what is the total amount of damages sustained by plaintiff ESP Finance? ESP Finance, that's the notes. That's $140 million of the 170. And we proved this to you a lot of different ways. But maybe the easiest way is just to look at BDO's audit. And in BDO's audits, it says the promissory notes 142 million. Now, you may be asking why I'm not asking for 142 million. Well, the reason is they actually, after the restructuring, paid it down a little bit. So I can only ask you for what we actually lost, and that's 140 million. And then if we go back to the verdict form, please. And then they start the same questions again for Banco Espirito Santo. That's the $30 million line. And Espirito Santo has proven that Banco Espirito Santo justifiably relied and that BDO was the but-for cause of the damages. And if you find that, Espirito Santo has proven, you should check yes. Can you do that? Thank you. And then it'll be the same long list again. And again, if you find for us, then because BDO was the but-for cause and we were justified in lying, then you would check no. And Espirito Santo has proven, you should check no. But BDO wants to blame. And again, that's a lot of them. And so then we get to the damages question again, because if you answer no, you skip the percentage question, and then you go to the total amount, and that's 30 million. And again, that's in BDO's audit.
5 minutes remaining, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. Where they had the line of credit, and they said 30 million. But there's one other jury instruction and one other verdict question I need to show you in my last 5 minutes. Can you go to the jury instruction, please? And His Honor will instruct you that you already have found defendant BDO Seidman grossly negligent by clear and convincing evidence. If you now find for ESP Finance or plaintiff Banco Espirito Santo, Nassau Branch, and against BDO, you should consider whether in addition to compensatory damages, plaintiffs are entitled to punitive damages in the circumstances of this case as punishment and as a deterrent of others. And then on the verdict form, there's a question. Can we go there? Okay, now the jury instruction. This goes back to allow me to change words quickly. The very first thing. Because when you found BDO negligent, that's the 170 million.